Welcome into the Trevor Staub Show, episode number 34. Today we have a really great guest. We've got Will Schusterick. Will Schusterick is a three-time USDGC champ, so that makes a perfect guest for a USDGC preview show. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. All right, we welcome on to the show now our guest this week. We have a very special guest. We've got the three-time USDGC champion, Will Schusterick. Thank you so much for joining the show, Will.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So this episode is kind of going to serve as like a USDGC preview with it, with it coming up this week. And I figured what better guest to have than a three-time US champ, somebody who would kind of understand the tournament. I feel like as disc golfers who have been in the game for a while, we have like this responsibility to translate to the newer players like what this tournament means to us, because they see it from a far away perspective. And, we're playing on this college campus, but everybody else is freaking out about it. And like, there's almost a disconnect. But I figured somebody who has won it throughout a few different, a span of years, you would understand better than most, like what this tournament means. So before we get into that, Will, just to give some context to everybody, many of our viewers will know you from your playing days. Some of our very new players to the game might not know you as well. So just kind of give your disc golf story, just an abridged version, and kind of how you were introduced to the game in the first place.
Yeah, I was introduced when I was 13 years old in Knoxville, Tennessee. Grew up in Knoxville and started playing at Admiral Farragut Park, which is a little 9-holer, and Victor Ashe Park, which is a pretty long 18-hole course in Knoxville. And really started playing, and as soon as I started playing, I luckily started kind of watching the pro side of disc golf. So I was watching the 2003 DVD of the USDGC, and if anybody watching can somehow find that on Amazon, grab it as soon as you can, because that is a classic, and you'll really get a trip down nostalgia lane about the editing that disc golf videos used to have. I would watch that maybe, honestly, 5 times a day, 5 to 10 times a day, because the shots and the videos and the music was so fun to watch. And really watching pro disc golf really got me to a point to where I could see what you can be and see what people can do. And so ever since I started playing at 13, I would go to the course. I would play anywhere between 3 and 5 rounds a day. My mom would drop me off at the course. Yeah. I had people picking me up from school, taking me to go play disc golf, constantly playing the leagues and weeklies. And then I actually played USDGC when I was 15 in 2007.
Yeah,
they used to give away state representative spots. And so I got the Tennessee state rep spot and played the tournament. I remember Jay Harbor from Huck Lab actually sent me a shirt, like a really nice shirt to wear during the tournament. And it was honestly one of the coolest and best experiences ever. After that tournament, I was picked up by, disc manufacturer to be sponsored. 2007, I started playing. 2008, I started playing Open and got second in Rookie of the Year to Paul Macbeth. Played, I think, 25 to 30 tournaments that year. Started winning some Open tournaments. And then 2009, I played way more. 2010, I won my first USDGC when I was 18. Graduated high school that year. And then since then, I've won it in 2012, 2014. I've played disc golf in just about every state. I've played in 12 different countries. And yeah, that's kind of my
there you have it. Yeah,
short, quick disc golf background.
No, yeah, that's it for sure. I love hearing you talk about the disc golf DVDs, because a lot of people don't know about that. That's really old school, but there is some. You can find some of them on YouTube, like recorded versions of like some of the older DVDs. I've seen some from like Pro Worlds back in the day. Actually, I was just looking at one today from an older USDGC, and it is just a whole different like style of disc golf. Like everything back then was so much different, and it's beautiful. It's really art is what it is. But you mentioned, USDGC. So I was going to ask, how are you introduced to it in the first place? So it's safe to say like that DVD was kind of your first introduction to that tournament.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know. I would have no idea that it existed unless, honestly, YouTube was not very big. It was around, but it was really small. I don't even think, for the people know, I don't think Google owned YouTube back then.
Right.
Which, yeah, that's pretty old back in the day. And VHS was still around. I watched Marshall Street 2005 on a VHS, and a lot of the kids who start to play disc golf now have never seen a VHS player.
Very true.
And I don't know if I've seen one in a long time, but I used to just watch, pro disc golf. I think which is a big deal, and it really shows off the sport in a great way for what it can be. I think is what really propels the sport forward.
Absolutely, yeah. So would you say it's safe to say that because you were you saw USDGC early and it was a big influence upon your game, would you say that it kind of set your sights on that tournament pretty quick as one that you wanted to win in the future? Like that was early in your career, something that was, on your radar?
I don't think it ever came across as something I wanted to win until I had the opportunity in the moment. I think when I was 15, I wanted to do my best to even play in the tournament, just period, because I felt like I was talented in a non like cocky way. Like I just loved to play, loved to just compete and do as best as I can. I would practice putting all night long. I got my absences from school approved, so I would actually be almost never in school on Friday. Not ideal situation for most kids, but since I was a professional athlete, I would actually leave school on like Thursday or Friday, go practice for a tournament. And then as that was coming up, you have people talk about it as you're watching it, read more into it, and they really talk about how prestigious the event is and what it brings to the sport as I'm watching it. And then there's the opportunity, hey, I have this chance of getting the Tennessee State rep spot at the time. Mm-hmm. And then I played. I remember there's some people that I still played with the final round or the first round that are still around. And so we talk about how we played Usdgc 2007. And then I played in 2008, and I think I got top 20, which you then got re-qualified for the next year. In 2009, I got the same thing. And then 2010 is when I won. So I have the lifetime exemption.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned, 07 was your first event. This is a tournament that, like you said, you had been trying to get to. It was a dream of yours to play there and, be on that course. Obviously you took 93rd that year. You were very young. It wasn't your best competitive finish, but what was it like just stepping foot on that course? I remember the first time I got to play that course was in college at the Dean's Cup. And after seeing it for years and years and finally stepping foot on that property and playing that course, it was just unthinkable. Like I couldn't even, it was like I was in a dream. What was it for you, stepping foot on that course, being able to compete for that first time there?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. The first time I played, I had the first tee time. And we had three people in our group. So,
oh, man.
I played with a guy from Sweden. His name was Christian. And I cannot remember the other person. I think I played with Link Morgan, if I can remember correctly. Pretty sure those were the three people in our group. And we played the entire round in less than 2 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's probably pretty fast.
Which is very, very fast for that course. And nobody was in the way. But it was just the ultimate challenge, really. I mean, that was something that people look forward to because it was almost so rare of a course design to see anything like that. There was nothing at all on the tour that represented what Winthrop represented. And now when you see courses like Ledgestone or anything else that has ropes and what you could call artificial out of bounds, it really seemed like it started with Winthrop. I don't know the history even before Winthrop. There might have been something that sparked what they're doing now, but what I see is that Winthrop did this from even the 90s, and now any tournament or course that has this artificial out of bounds is from USDGC. But they had this unique thing that nobody else offered that challenged the best disc golfers in the world. And now looking back at the course, if you were going to watch that video, the course doesn't seem difficult when you watch it on film, but it was just out of this world from back in the day. Like nobody knew how to approach it, the basket positions, the out of bounds. In nowadays world, it's wide open. But back then it was like, geez, this is a really tight hole right here, and how they approached it was just cool to watch.
Yeah, it is definitely safe to say that USDGC in general over the years has kind of set the standard for disc golf, and they've been able to push initiatives that have carried over to the rest of the sport, and people have kind of taken notice. It's certainly one of, if not the best run event all year. I mean, they do a phenomenal job, and it's just been great. So you were able to win 3 times during your career, 2010, 2012, and 2014. So I kind of want to walk through each one because each one kind of had its own individual feel to it. You had first one in 2010 is always something, and then 2014 it was certainly quite an eventful win as well. So starting with 2010, this is your first major win, definitely a defining point in your career. Like you said, you just graduated high school. Kind of break down that win for you, like what it was like throughout that tournament, and then just finally capturing that title, what it meant to you.
Yeah, I had never won anything bigger than a B tier. and I won in 2010. And then when I won USDGC, it was some of the first times I ever beat players like Ken Climo and Barry Schultz. I never beat him in any larger tournament. I have played a lot of the larger tournaments that year. I went to the Japan Open in 2010 right after I graduated high school. I remember going overseas and playing that, and I think I did halfway decent. I don't think I made the final 9, which they used to have, which a lot of people don't know what the final 9 is, which is also kind of funny. But no, I played some of the bigger events. I didn't do well at Worlds that year. I remember getting like 45th or 50th. I don't think I ended up cashing, or maybe I got very last cash, something along those lines. But I remember going into the event from an AIDS here in Georgia the week before and calling one of my best friends, Big Andy, and just saying, I really think I have a chance. If I can put together and I can improve of this last tournament, I feel like I can compete with the best players. I remember leaving that tournament and really finally thinking to myself, I can compete at the highest level if I do these things that I know I need to just work on and improve. So being at USDGC in 2010, I remember where I stayed, what I did every single morning, what I ate. I would eat, Chick-fil-A on the way to the course every single day. There's the Chick-fil-A right there off the road that everybody goes to. And I remember going there, warming up, doing the exact same thing every single day. Practice rounds, I would stay late at the course and use the lights from the soccer field and practice putt either on hole 5 or hole 6 or hole 7, just kind of in that general area. But I would just be beating down the practice baskets, making sure I was ready for the tournament. And ultimately, I know what I needed to do was to putt well inside the circle. I didn't make a putt outside the circle, maybe one the entire tournament, because I could drive the disc really well, be safe. I think that's the year they did stroke and distance, so that also was a really big factor in that, because if somebody went out of bounds, they had to rethrow and take a stroke, which doesn't happen anymore. Now you have to be able to move up. They actually changed that, so you cannot inflict stroke and distance.
Yeah, no, it certainly 2010 was definitely a breakthrough win for you. So 2012, moving on to the next one. This one is the one that I'm very familiar with because of the documentary Shoestrings that goes along with it. I don't think you probably realize how iconic that documentary is, but like that was like, as far as disc golf YouTube went, that was the most viewed video I've ever seen. Like I probably watched it 100 times. I think I could more than likely quote more of it than you probably could. And you said the quotes. Like it is like ingrained in my brain at this point. So that's how I was like, that was like very early when I started playing disc golf. Like one of the first things I was introduced to, and that like gave me a picture of USDGC was that documentary. Because it kind of showcased, like, there's a lot of clips of you talking about, how much you just want to get back to your happy place, back where you were in 2010. You want to get back in that winner's circle. And then, you kind of have some of the other players, like Nico is very heavily featured, and it's talking about how, he's wanting to get back there too and get that win. And it really like showed just how like heartbreaking that tournament can be and how much things can switch, because you'd see the leaderboard like jump each day and people be going up and down the leaderboard. But that 2012 win, talk about what made you decide to make the documentary, and then just some of the things that stood out from that year.
Yeah, we had no intentions of, we started the documentary a few months before the tournament. So I would love to say I planned to win the tournament, but it just happened to work out like that. And I was reached out to from some people who were doing a documentary on one of the U.S. most well-known marathon runners.
Okay.
I can't remember, is Ryan something, I can't remember his last name, but they were doing a documentary and following him in Africa, just training and running and doing his thing. And they actually reached out to me, and they were around my age and said, hey, we're actually taking a break from this documentary. We still want to continue and film. We want to do a documentary on disc golf. And so they actually flew to Nashville, and we met and talked, and they had this idea of doing something that they could submit to short film festivals. And they actually contracted out the music. They did all the footage, everything about it they actually created. And so they met me at Cedar Hill Park that day. That like the very beginning of the film was me teaching the people that helped make the film to play disc golf.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they were actually a part of it, which is kind of cool. And so we're just talking, doing random interviews, and then they said, hey, we're going to follow you through Usdgc, being the returning champion, 2011 taking the break, of course, being the returning champion, we want to follow you. And they had to go through some clearance of like from the tournament itself to be able to film and that kind of thing, which now is a lot more strict. But back then it was like, look, you can film, only we have live coverage going on. But it was like, hey, we're really have to film the tournament to get the footage and the story. Yeah. And so they didn't film everything, but they happened to get Ricky's throw in on 13, which is just iconic. Because back in the day, his throwing form was completely different. He was just now coming up in the ranks of being a top player. Yeah. And it was just really, really exciting for that. And I still talk to those guys too. And it took a little bit, and then we submitted it to a bunch of short film festivals. It was played in Memphis, in Utah, and we actually watched it in Memphis whenever it was being played. So it was played in a theater as like a short film, which was pretty cool. And then after everything was done, I ended up posting it on my YouTube channel. I felt like it really just needed to be shared to the disc golf world.
Yeah, I think over like the couple years I've been working here at Foundation, I've like created a small army of people. Like I'm trying to get them to watch like some of the old school disc golf videos, and Shoestrings is always the first one I recommend. It's like it is such a great encapsulation of like old school disc golf. You know, you got Nico walking around with like a soccer backpack carrying his discs. Like there's just so many good clips. We actually have a quote wall in our warehouse, and it's just a bunch of out of context disc golf quotes. And the one I have from Shoestrings is when you're walking along the camera and you say, I should probably take this time to talk about all the URLs that I own. and that to me, like, that's that is just like perfect. It's so funny. Like the fact that like back in the day, like that was a thing that disc golfers did, was like buy up disc golf URLs.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they would talk about buying websites.
Yeah. Do you still own any of them, or have you sold them all?
I have slowly got to a point, because you get the GoDaddy notification that says your renewal is about to take place. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to figure out my login. I got to cancel these things. Like, I'm not doing anything with that. Like, it's become more realistic. I'm not doing anything with these random websites.
Right. Yeah. As I know you had like Will Schusterick Disc Golf, willschusterick.com, but then you had some like, I think you and Nico, between the two of you, had like collegediscgolf.com, playdiscgolf.com, like other ones like that I was like, hey, that wasn't a bad idea. Like,
Nico was all about it. He would think of something and say, he had it on his phone to where he could just go on there, buy it for like a couple years, 2 or 3 years, and just have it and owned it. And now College Disc Golf and Play Disc Golf are 2 websites that are functioning. So
yeah, there you go. It all worked out. But yeah, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen Shoestrings, it's on YouTube. It needs more views than it has. It's incredible. Some of my other favorite moments, I'll just say, I love when you're eating Chick-fil-A and you like purposely won't use your right hand because of the grease. I really like when.
It's a good catch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I remember all of it. When you're doing the stretches in your hotel room and you want to be like the flamingo that's on the screen or whatever.
Yeah.
You're like, whatever that animal is, I want to be it. That's another favorite moment of mine. Anyways, listen, if you want to be a part of the Inside Scoop, you're gonna have to go watch it.
We'll have a watch party.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's what we need, a Shoestrings watch party. I'd be there. All right. So 2014. Moving on to your final USDGC win. This one was. Honestly, if I look back, you know, it's crazy because like last year we had such a crazy finish to USDGC with just the one-hole playoff, but people probably don't realize that 2014 may have been the craziest year. Now, the year that Climo and Schultz went on like hole 18 or whatever it was, or hole 17 and 18 for like 6 holes, that was pretty crazy. But 2014 was pretty nuts because you have a few different dynamics going on here. You know, first of all, we go into hole 17 and you have Johnny McRae with a 4-stroke lead, and probably it's funny because the Pro Tour just tweeted this out the other day. They tweeted out the footage of Johnny, and I was just watching it back in, and it's probably the most heartbreaking thing you'll ever watch in disc golf. What was it like, you know, being in the event? You know, you're a competitor, so like there is obviously a side of you that is like, oh my goodness, I'm getting back in. Like this is happening. You know, the lead is diminishing, but then there's also part of you, I'm sure, that's like, this is really tough to watch. You know, where's your mind at as that's happening on 17?
I would say any competitor does not like to watch their competition fail. Right. Everybody wants your competition to be playing the best, and you hope that your practice and competitive level can be better than their best. Absolutely. So I don't think there's anybody on that card that is like fist pumping in the corner, so to speak. Nobody is happy for the fact that, the hole 17 got Johnny the way that it did. And I just remember him listening. He could have been listening to AC/DC or something like that, because he was hyped up the whole round. He had such a good energy to him. And if you go back and watch that final round, you'll see he had throw-ins, huge putts, and just so hyped. And he's one of the people that can really bring up the energy in the crowd, in the group, and all that kind of stuff. So it was great playing with him during that round and going into it. I mean, nobody expects it. I mean, they know that it is possible, but he was playing so well that you just expect this is a no-brainer shot for him to be able to put it down there. And a majority of his shots were good. That's
right. Yeah, no, all of them were very close. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't just fly right into the water or hyzer out or land short. They hit, I think the first one even hits the grass.
He hit grass on the first one. I believe his next two hit the hay bale like in the air. And then another one skidded off the back. So all of them were within a foot of being perfect. Very tough.
Yeah, it was really tough to watch. And I mean, then of course, as a competitor, you're just doing what you do. I mean, you just go up there, want to get it safe. I think I ended up taking a par, and Paul got a birdie, if I remember. I think he hit kind of a longer putt to get a birdie. That's like, I think there's some, of course, iconic photo of him hitting a putt on 17.
Yeah.
If I remember. And then
I believe that's correct.
And then 18, Johnny still had a chance.
Yeah, he got birdie to get into the playoff.
Yeah, and I remember trying to think of it. I remember throwing the tee shot and maybe not having a look for birdie on my upshot. Maybe that's what it was. I don't remember exactly. I don't have the best memories, but close.
I know you had two putts to win on 18, but I can't remember. I think were they both in the playoff? Do you remember, or was one of them?
I think
in regulation.
That's what it was. Okay, I can't remember 2012 or 2014. Okay. I made two putts on 18, so it was 2014.
Yeah, it was.
I remember I could actually set up perfectly. I remember I was dialed into that shot all week. So I would line up, no run up, stand still. I would have a slight anhyzer release, and I was doing this mostly with my H1 and my PA4, that I could just have a perfect release every single time, like very committed and confident on the throwing stroke. And so I would throw my H1 super overstaple disc, slide anhyzer. It would get up to the hill, nose up, and then fade into the basket. And that's when it skipped down to the bottom of the hill.
Right.
And I remember now, obviously watching it in the video, it looks like it's a 12-foot putt when you're really back. It really does. And so it's like, wow, that's actually a short miss putt. When I'm in the moment, it doesn't seem 12 feet.
Sure.
At all.
Yeah. Elevated basket for the win, knowing that a rollaway is possible. Like it feels like a mile.
Yeah, exactly. And then everybody too behind the basket. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. And And I remember too, it's a little bit less pressure knowing if I don't make it, I'm still tied. So there's slightly less pressure. Of course, you want to make the putt, obviously, but just missed it going uphill. And that's kind of started everybody running to hole one, Johnny getting the birdie, Paul, I'm pretty sure getting the par as well because we were tied. And I think that Paul maybe even almost went out of bounds and kicked in, or that was the first playoff hole that he was like right on the edge in those really thick trees.
I do remember that. Yeah, because so you guys, you missed that putt on 18, and then you forced it back to 18 in the playoff, and have a very similar putt.
Exact same.
Pretty much exact same putt for the win again, and again missed it. And like you could see it, that one, like you could really see it on your face. It seemed like you were almost in disbelief at that point. Like you had two chances. What is it like dealing with, you're fighting the mental game so much in that moment, and in a major situation against a guy like Paul, who really does not let people make mistakes very often, knowing that you had two chances to win, you let them both slip. Like, how are you keeping morale at that point and trying to stay in the moment?
Yeah, the only thing that you can think of is, because all bad thoughts creep in, and it's easy to take that to the next hole. And I think Johnny got knocked out the first playoff hole, and then we went to hole one. And the only thing you need to be thinking about is the fact that you still have a chance. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. You can't really take it, during a round, you can take it to the next hole and people get upset and they hit the first tree, and then they get more upset and it carries on. That's it. You can't really go into hole one upset because you just missed the chance to win the biggest tournament of the year and then bring that with you. You know, you're not playing stroke play. You're playing against one other guy. And you need to just keep it in your mind. And what I tried to do is keep it in my mind. You still have a chance. You still have a chance to win, even though you just really failed and people are going to be posting about that for the rest of your life. You need to take the moment and do something about it. And so that was really in my mind the whole time.
Yeah, so obviously it gets back to hole one. Paul misses a putt. You have one more putt for the win, and this time you're able to cash in on it. I'm sure the relief was insane, you know, getting the win there. Was that putt was that one of the more nerve-wracking putts you've ever had to make, knowing you have a third putt for the win, like that you just need to make?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I missed 2 putts nearly the same distance, but just on a you know, the ones I missed were uphill. The ones I made was pretty much flat. You know, everybody starts to get a little bit closer because they kind of assume, you know, and I want to assume too. And so walking up to it, it's really just taking your time. Imagine that you're in your backyard putting. You know, those are the putts that you honestly walk up and you're just like, close your eyes, throw 3, and you're just like warming up for the round. I mean, that it's really about that short. So, you know, walking up, I really just considered, hey, you don't need to really focus on the small things, like make sure to follow through, make sure your grip is right. Like you just need to focus on like a short release and you got it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the key with some of those putts is just like keeping it simple. So, you know, as one of the more, you know, probably, you know, one of the most accomplished players at Winthrop, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the event and the course as a whole, kind of as it's evolved over the years. You know, first of all, the first thing to kind of gauge, you know, where would you rank Winthrop Golds in your, you know, like, would you say it's like a top 3 course, your favorite course, a top 10 course, as far as course that you enjoy playing and competing at?
Yeah, I love playing and competing at it. I think one of the biggest things that brings to Winthrop, you know, put aside the course design, put that to the side. I think just the allure of the fact that it's been at the same place for so long. Of course, the course has had a little bit of changes really to adapt to the style of play that everybody is doing and to make it maybe a little bit more difficult or tighter. But just the tournament atmosphere in that place brings so much respect for all disc golfers whenever they get there and they realize hole 3, wow, people have been playing this same exact tee pad in this same exact hole for years. I know this year it's changed.
But this year, but
this year's changed, but hole 1. I mean, when you walk up to that, I've seen people just like, I don't know how to grip.
It's terrifying.
I don't know how to grip it. You know, it's like it's 250 feet, and they used to not have the trees, the 2 trees where you have to throw low, slide anhyzer, and flex it. It used to just be dead straight, almost wide open, and people would miss it all the time. And it doesn't matter how small or big the gap is. When your name is called by Andy Green on the first hole and everybody's clapping for you and realize everybody's looking at you, then you have to perform at what you have been doing to practice. Can you get over that? And then when you get to hole 2, it's almost like a sigh of release. Oh, thank God I'm done with hole 1.
Right. Yeah.
And then hole 2, you're just like, I need to throw it as hard as I can to get these nerves out right now.
It certainly has like, is almost like a whimsical magic to that course. You know, you feel it. I remember stepping on hole 1 for the first time, and like it's funny. You watch that event for all those years, and you think that certain holes, hole 3 is a great example. You think that a hole like that isn't that difficult, and then you step up there, and you're like, this shot is just kind of finicky. Like, there's not really one that suits your eye. Like, you could take the forehand wide. Do I try and push the woods on the right? There's a lot of holes like that where things just they're a little uneasy. Like, there's a lot of decisions to be made out there. I personally think, you know, it's my favorite course to watch every year. I think it for whatever the course design is, it plays incredibly well. So you were mentioning kind of the changes, you know, this year. The big changes, obviously, being hole 2 is now a par 3. Hole 3 and 4 have been combined. They brought back the gauntlet hole for a new hole. So I wanted to ask, because of the changes that have happened over the years, and some of them, some of the holes have really stayed true. Certainly, hole 17 hasn't changed in a long time since they've been throwing from the top of the hill. Is there any holes that aren't on the course anymore but have existed in previous versions of the event that you really miss and think should still be involved?
That's a good question. You know, I like some of the changes, like hole 8, for example, is probably one of my favorite changes because it extends that back to where it forces you to throw a longer sidearm or roller on your second shot. I think it was, they started to add in, and it shows how much people are watching the film where people are landing and trying to add out of bounds where there's a consistent landing zone, because you used to be able to fly the out of bounds on your left and jump into the fence, and then you would have like a 120-foot approach shot to that short basket. Now it's completely different. People are going, I've gone putter or mid-range off the tee just to land safe and then attack with a roller. I like some of the changes. I would say I am really going to miss hole 2 now that they took it out. I think that is an iconic Winthrop hole. It really is just an iconic shot. I think it would be fun. I know they've had a couple basket position changes for hole 13, but it would be great to see them go back to the original tee pad. Maybe they play 2 tee pads and play just completely different hole in general. I think that would be a great thing, because I personally don't love the tee pad moving over to where people just bomb it as far as they can. I think it's a challenging, not just fun, but challenging shot to land in that strip and then approach. And then they could have, I don't know exactly where the basket is this year. It looks like it's still on the same strip all the way in the back, but that would be cool that you land there and go all the way up.
Yeah, they've changed it this year to where everything kind of stays to the left. You're never crossing the parking lot.
Gotcha.
But the tee pad you're referring to is the one where you kind of you started almost in line with the lot and had to cut into the tree line. Left.
Yeah, you're on that like inlet, like all the way. So the walking path was on your left. I liked that hole. I actually have a funny stat that I have birdied 13 and 5 12 times in a row for 3 straight years. I birdied that hole. So
that is impressive.
Yeah, and there's some holes I'm not really attached to any of them. I mean, I really like hole 1 the way it is now. I didn't like it to where people were only standing on the corner of the tee pad and throwing a forehand. Nobody threw backhand. I mean, I think James Conrad was maybe the only one to not
even he was trying to force the forehand a couple times.
Yeah, I think he even threw forehand, and
he did. Yeah,
I didn't love that. I really love a starting hole where you can see the basket. And people who are watching get the idea, here's the tee pad, here's the basket. So if that's their first time ever seeing or watching disc golf, they understand that that's what a hole should look like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I think, they play around with things a lot, but I'm glad that some holes like hole 1 have come back to the original, that like even if they make changes, they're not afraid to revert back based on feedback. So that's certainly good. Another thing I wanted to ask is, they're one of the inevitable things in disc golf is likely in the future the tournament moving away from Winthrop. They have an active contract now, but there's been, whispers of, when do they decide to move away? Because, being on a college campus, it's very likely that it won't be a permanent destination. So let's say if you were in charge of the committee, and you had to make a decision, what would your thought process be with moving that event?
Yeah, I think you have to prioritize what makes the event. And what makes the event is spectators. Honestly, it really brings in, you have to show off the sport in the best level. And you could say in a good or bad way, that means that it needs to be open. It just needs to be an open venue where people can sit on grandstands like at the Preserve and watch hole 18 or hole 1 or maybe 4 or 5 holes. So you can sell spectator passes. You're in a confined area. There needs to be an area for people to vend, where you can go to a little vendor village to get drinks and food, buy stuff about the event, a pro shop. I went to the FedEx Cup down in Atlanta, and that's exactly how it is. Like, they prepare for that event, I think 6 months in advance. I mean, they're busing or shuttling people over there. You can't park on the premise, and as soon as you get there, you get a map. You say, here are the holes. We suggest you stay between these 3 or 4 holes. If you want to walk the whole course, you can, but it's better to watch the front 9. And then you can just jump around. You can see people finish, see people play, but there's people everywhere. So if they're coming in and saying, let's say I'm on the committee and saying, where should we put this thing? We have to consider the fact that it's got to be a big piece of land. The course is going to be long. It's going to be a little bit more open. Some people think that's boring, but you have to show the sport off where the disc flies far. People are hitting long putts, and then you just need a good course design with the elevation and the slope and some out of bounds for the challenge aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's a lot of people are very hung up on, woods golf. I think it's a really tough struggle because it was kind of a lot of it was the origins of disc golf, particularly on the East Coast, in Carolina, Tennessee, those kind of places. Woods golf is such a big thing. But you're right. For big events especially, it's important to have open venues because it just opens up so many doors as far as not only what it looks like on the broadcast, but what it looks like for the spectators. And that can't be underestimated for sure. So kind of lastly, kind of thing I want to talk about with the USDGC is, you actually posted this yesterday, I think it was last night, talking about how this is going to be a year you were not able to compete in the USDGC. You didn't feel like you were prepared enough. And I just kind of wanted to ask, you've kind of gone through a transition in the past few years where, you stepped away from the game on the competitive side quite a bit, moving away from tour. You've become a father. You've taken a large role at Prodigy and kind of moved towards that side of disc golf. Just talk about, a little bit about what decisions kind of led to that and just what life has been like in the disc golf community ever since, moving away from the competitive sides and kind of the struggles that come with that.
Yeah. And so for those that don't know, I had when my son was born, November 2020, he was actually in the hospital for 6 to 7 months. He had open heart surgery 2 months in. That's a really long story that I love to tell, but I won't take up too much time. But during that 6 to 7 months, I played maybe 3 times. And that was November to April-ish. Didn't play any tournaments, absolutely no practice during the cold, sort of winter until we got to April. And that really got me away from anything tournament related. Of course, I mean, the priorities are there. Long story short, in the hospital every day. Now he's doing great. I post about him all the time. It's my favorite thing. And going from playing and competing to that, and then now having a much larger role at Prodigy, sometimes it's very refreshing because I have came to, the conclusion, I'm not going to go back on tour. It's always the joke whenever I post a video online and people are like, going back on tour. And it's like, yeah, totally. After one shot, I'm going to get back on the road. I would love to be able to go on the road for a month or maybe 2 months. Like that's even a long time, and be able to go to some big events and pro tours. And I would love to get to a point to where I play just the pro tours. But locally, I've gotten really involved with the disc golf community in Dalton. Not even talking about Prodigy and being involved there on the responsibility side, but the local disc golf going on here is just so great. And honestly, we're putting in so many courses, doing some very exciting stuff in this area and community. I miss the competitive side, like the playing competitive side. Traveling is a grind for those that, want to do it and go on tour. You need to be ready to live out of your suitcase for months at a time. You're never really in a consistent spot. Now, I would say it's easier to go on tour because the tournaments are 4 days. So you're not almost not playing back to back to back to back to back to back. I played 48 tournaments in a year, 48 weekends.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Counted, I drove 60,000 miles, signing up for tournaments. I would set up clinics. I would do all these additional things that I just love to do. I still love to do them. They're just not high up on my priority rank. And, honestly, I just got away from it for everything that was going on. I slowly am coming back in. I still play 2 times a week. I just don't have the time right now to really focus and make sure my game is feeling dialed in, if that makes sense. Yeah. I talked about it with several different people and thought about it, and it just didn't make sense for me to go to the biggest tournament of the year saying I've only played once or twice a week. I'm not confident in nearly anything because you don't play a lot. I'm going to play for fun. And that's what I want to do. I want to go play for fun. I want to do fun stuff while I'm playing because I love the sport. And it's better. And right now it's just better like that for me, just to get back into the side of enjoying playing. I think that's one of the hardest things is, going from a competitive side of really competitive, number 1 in the world, U.S. champion, to, okay, now you're going to do none of it. Now you're going to play 4 events a year. And it's a tough dial back, but there's some things I just really enjoy. I love events. We host a lot of events here. I love courses and ultimately growing the sport, being involved with different things, that's great. Obviously, there's the whole prodigy side and the responsibility that comes with that. But
Yeah.
I just love disc golf in general, that I don't have to be playing disc golf to still continue to love disc golf. Yeah,
well, that's awesome, man. I'm really glad that, obviously everything you went through with the birth of your son, the whole disc golf community was behind you. And I think I'm really happy that all, has worked out and he's healthy now and doing great. I think it's really cool that you found a niche in disc golf where you're able to be happy and be a part of the sport, without being the same competitor that you used to be, and I think that's great. So I want to talk a bit about Prodigy. Obviously, you have a big role there, and Prodigy's kind of been doing a lot of new stuff recently. There's been some changes in the manufacturing, outsourcing some of the manufacturing overseas. There's been new molds coming out, and I've seen a lot of new Prodigy plastic that I really like. So just talk about some of the new things that are going on at Prodigy and how things have been over there.
Yeah, and to point on that too, we don't, and I sent a really nice message to Hunter, and he'll even say it, we don't actually outsource any manufacturing. We do manufacture in China, which is our own manufacturing.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just I know that they're very, some people think that other people do it, and we don't have any control. Like, yes, we do make some of our stuff that's over there, but we make a lot of stuff still in Dalton, Georgia. And I've got a really good looking disc right there. So we do a lot of cool swirly stuff here. Like, we have a lot of new things that are still continuing to come out, and just always excited. There's always something to do. You're in the disc golf world. You understand how much it's growing, and people are looking for more new all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun to plan that stuff, to talk to people about it, to build a company that's inside of it, and work together with a really awesome team here.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've certainly been noticing a lot of this new stuff coming from Prodigy has been really great. The run we recently just tested out was the PA5. PA5 was a fantastic mold. I was kind of wondering where that would fit in the putter lineup, but it really is different. It flips a lot easier than the PA4s that I used to throw. So I had a lot of fun throwing that one. But if you haven't checked out Prodigy Plastic, we certainly have a lot on our website. And they've been coming out with some really great molds in plastic lately. So make sure to kind of check in. I think there's a lot of underrated molds there for sure, especially when you get into some of the mid ranges and putters. There's some incredible stuff there for sure.
Yeah, we've got some new stuff coming. So
awesome. All right. So before I let you go, I wanted to get your predictions for USDGC this year. You obviously won't be at it this year, but and you are definitely allowed to name all Prodigy players, but who do you think people should be looking for this year at USDGC to take it down?
It's a good question. Man, it's really tough. So I know that obviously Ricky has been playing well. He just won the last one, or Simon won the last one. Sorry. He played
GFC.
Well in Vermont. Yeah. Simon's playing well. He's done well at USDGC. I would say, obviously, Paul's playing well. He's been right there at the top of the last two events and winning Worlds. So his confidence is very high, which that's scary for everybody. Whenever confidence is up high like that on a course like Winthrop, I think that's a really big deal coming into the event. It's been a little while since we've seen Calvin near the top, but he played extremely well last year, if I remember. Last year or the year before that, I remember he birdied 12 holes in a row in the pouring rain.
I think it was the year Dickerson won when it rained in the last round is when he was making that charge.
Exactly. So he's played well there. I don't know how the changes are going to affect the play, like the style of play, if anybody is going to come in with something different. Like hole 3 seems like the biggest change. I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing change-wise. I know 13.
People are saying it's gonna finish a few strokes harder, but it's not. I don't think it's really gonna change a ton.
Yeah. I mean, it's the players are so good nowadays that when they have a landing area, they're gonna land there. When they get it within 50, they're probably gonna make it. Especially somebody who's playing really well. So you're not gonna make a hole where a majority of people bogey it unless you just call a par 4 a par 3. Then that's the only way that they have a bogey every time they play. I mean, the players are too good, and the sport is not like a golf where you're putting a tiny hole in a tiny cup. It's a semi-big controllable disc into a semi-big catchable basket. And if you practice every day and you play every day, you're going to be really freaking good at doing that thing. And
Yeah.
and sometimes it's crazy how good people are. And this course shows how good people can be and how quickly somebody is going to fall. Like if you're not confident in your drives, if you're throwing a driver off of every single tee and skipping out of bounds and doing that kind of stuff versus controlling a 350-foot, 400-foot mid-range shot, you're going to be better than the other players. That's just really what it comes down to. So that's why I choose those players, because Simon is really controllable. Simon and Paul are extremely controllable. Calvin has got the distance, and he putts extremely well.
Yeah.
Ricky lives 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away, I think, from that course. Even though that course is not set up all year, that's his local area. So he's got the people behind him to rally him up, and he gets going, and it's hard to beat him, And,
very true.
Making long putts.
He certainly do. He's hungry for that U.S. title. It's the one he's really missing on his mantle. So that's certainly a narrative to be looking at. What do you think about your guy Gannon Buhr?
Yeah, Gannon is, don't want to point out the obvious, but of course Gannon is somebody that I expect to do well because he has the distance with the mid-range and the putters. I think that's really going to make what could be the final difference between first and fifth is choosing to throw something slower with no skip and being accurate versus throwing a driver or even fairway and trying to finesse it and landing it soft. That to me has been what I have been successful with at USDGC, is throwing putters and mids when other people might be throwing forehands or big backhands, something like that. But and it's not necessarily playing safe, because when you can throw a mid-range almost 400 feet, you can birdie almost every single hole on that course. Yeah. And that's what it's going to come down to. Of course, I don't know how the weather is going to affect it with the wind, if there is any. That makes a big difference, because then you're forced to throw something more overstable and forced to land it places where you're not used to landing, and it skips and slides and goes out of bounds, and all of a sudden it's been 12 holes and you haven't got a birdie because you haven't even been near the basket, or you've been out of bounds and scrambling to get par. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, we make predictions every week and we barely ever get them right because the field is so strong these days that it's almost impossible. But you certainly got a good list there, and we'll all be watching to see what happens. But Will, thanks for joining the show today. It was great hearing from you, and wish you the best of luck with Prodigy and whatever else is coming up for you.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, and thanks once again to Will Schusterick for joining the show. It was awesome getting some perspective on the USDGC from somebody who's won it 3 times. If you are not planning on watching the USDGC, well, then you need to change those plans. It's going to be on Disc Golf Network. You're going to want to check it out. I'm going to actually be there, fortunately, for the last day. It's an awesome event. If you're not familiar with it, get familiar with it, because you're going to love it. It's a really great time. But be here next Thursday. We're going to have another great guest, and we'll see you then.